Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 20th update on the tropics. As always, these thoughts are mine alone, and in making decisions regarding Tropical Storm Henri and Hurricane Grace, please refer to the National Hurricane Center, your local weather office, and your local authorities for all the latest information pertaining to your area. Well, we are in the final hours of Hurricane Grace's life here over the Atlantic, or at least the forecast period, as it is approaching the Mexican coast. It will likely be making landfall within the next 12 hours, and we have Tropical Storm Henri here making its way towards what is an increasingly likely landfall somewhere along the northeast coast. And we'll be talking about Grace first here. Let's get right into Grace here. You can see our system has rather powerful convection this afternoon, firing around what is an eye. If we look at microwave imagery, which we will look at in a minute, you can see this convection trying to wrap around this eye here. And this is indicative of intensification here. If we look at the infrared or the microwave imagery here, you can see what the structure is, and you can see that the system's convection is trying to wrap around this eye and tighten this eye as it makes its way towards the Mexican coast. It has a pretty good amount of time here to get something going, and currently it is sitting at 85 miles per hour, and it is seeming increasingly likely that we'll see a rather strong hurricane make its landfall somewhere here along the Veracruz region. This is making a general trek off to the west-southwest here, currently moving west, but will take a dip to the southwest here. Prior to landfall, it has about 12 hours left, and we could see a rather potent tropical cyclone make landfall here. If we look at the National Hurricane Center forecast here, you can see the rather large wind field here over the Gulf of Mexico here outlined by this orange, and you have our smaller hurricane force wind field here outlined by the red here. And it is going to be very location dependent on who exactly gets the worst impacts here, but it is generally coming towards the west-southwest at this point, and it probably will make landfall somewhere between winds of 100 to 110 miles per hour, given that the National Hurricane Center just upgraded it to a 90 mile per hour hurricane here, and just saw that. That must have just come in. And the system will likely be uninhibited up until the point of landfall. And so if you're inland in Mexico here, you're going to be watching for heavy rain and flash flooding and mudslides, as this is all going to be a part of the impacts here as the storm continues to track inland and dissipate. And it will cross into the eastern Pacific sometime late on Saturday or early Sunday, but at that point we won't be talking about the system anymore. Zooming back out to the big picture here, we have Tropical Storm Henri now moving a little bit off to the north now. We get a closer look at our system here. You can see on a visible loop you have very strong convection popping here on what is the mid-level circulation. It is currently popping around that mid-level circulation, but you can see that the lower level circulation is a little bit removed from this mid-level region of powerful convection and mid-level circulation here. And there's a couple things that are going on with the system right now. One, the shear is beginning to relax, and you can see this. If you look at the water vapor loop of the northwest Atlantic, you can see outflows beginning to expand out north of the system once again. That was something that was not happening yesterday, as the system was being sheared rather heavily, and you can see the northerly flow or the northeasterly flow that was pushing down on the system has now moved well off to the east, and the system is beginning to re-strengthen and reorganize as it does this. And you can see that the convection is trying to rotate upward now. And if we look even more at the visible loop here, you can see that there's a little bit of an elongation here. You can kind of tell by the cloud motions heading into the mid-level circulation, or what is the mid-level circulation right here. And that indicates that and this is indicated on microwave imagery too, that we may be seeing a center reformation attempt to happen here while the system is under relaxing shear. And the key to this is, if we look at the microwave imagery, this is the lower levels here. You can see our circulation center here. This is the general center, but you can see this burst of convection in the lower levels and the center being a little elongated, and it's going to want to favor the convection side of the circulation here. And so even though it's a little elongated right now, the center will likely reform on the southeastern side of this, and that should prolong the move up to the north that we're eventually going to see with the system, and should add a little bit more time for the system to strengthen here, and this could become rather strong as it comes up to the north here. And if we look at the water vapor loop once again, you can tell that this is going to be under what is generally favorable upper level flow. You have two channels of northerly outflow, or two channels of outflow coming out of the system that will develop tonight. You have this upper level low centered over the Ohio River Valley here, which is directing flow out of the southwest in the upper levels, and then you have this upper level low here located to the south and east of the system, which is already directing outflow generally out of the south. And so this will help ventilate the system as it comes up north, and it will begin to interact with this trough a little more healthily, and we'll really see a lot of outflow being pushed northward as the system gets tugged off to the north. And so if we look at the H-Wharf model run here, if we go back a little bit, you can see where we're at right now. The H-Wharf is a little high in terms of the pressure of the system right now, as it is almost a hurricane now, as winds of 70 miles per hour per the latest National Hurricane Center advisory here. You can see what we're talking about with this upper level low, ventilating the system off to the south, and you have hints of upper level flow from the southwest on the other side of the system that is beginning to ventilate the system. But generally speaking, we're in a pretty light environment in terms of shear. And so as this gets north, it is going to get closer to this upper level low here, and that ventilation will improve, and you're really going to see probably some pretty epic outflow coming out of the system. And now, as we look at our system in terms of steering, it is becoming increasingly likely here that we're going to see a landfall somewhere along the coast here, anywhere between New Jersey and the area of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So somewhere in this ring or this line of coast is going to get hit by the system, and it's unfortunately looking more and more like it's going to be westward rather than a grazing blow here, as the system, for aforementioned reasons, is attempting to slow its turn off to the north, which would mean a bigger interaction with this trough here. And if we go to the Z500 vorticity here, you can see better defined on the H-Wharf here. You have your upper level low here, and this upper level ridge over here that is beginning to connect with the ridge that is right here. So essentially we have a ridge axis that is something like this. And so flow is generally going to be coming out of the west at this point, or out of the east at this point, or southeast. And so the more delayed this turn is, because the interaction with this upper level low is pretty much guaranteed at this point, the closer it will be with this upper level low, and the better the positioning will be for a landfall of the system, moving generally off to the flow here is generally out of the east-southeast, but the net movement of the system will probably be more something like this if it were to do a hook. And the increasingly likely scenario here is that it comes either straight out of the southeast into Long Island here, or it comes out of the south and hits Long Island in this angle, or it comes straight out and hits Rhode Island. But the likelihood of it coming out and grazing the Cape Cod area is becoming increasingly less likely, which is bad news in terms of impacts here, as the system will be pretty powerful at this point. And you can see this interaction happening. The upper level low pinwheels it around, and the H-Wharf brings it in just to the east of Long Island here on this particular model run. H-Wharf has been running a little east on this particular system, and HWRF is not a fantastic track model, but this is generally what the steering flow looks like here. And so we're trending west on the system a little bit, and this is not looking great, as a farther west system would have a little less time over cooler waters, because if we look at the sea surface temperatures, sea surface temperature dynamics here, you can see we have the Gulf Stream here that is outlined by the yellow here. We have, well, really the core of the Gulf Stream is right here, outlined by the red, but the end of favorable sea surface temperatures for tropical cyclones ends right there. And you can see very clearly that if it comes up northward, it would spend more time over cooler water. But if it comes off to the west here, it would spend a little less time over that cooler water and would actually be moving faster because the time over water would be less. And so you don't want a faster storm in this particular situation, because that would mean less strengthening, and we're likely to see the system get rather strong right here as it peaks over the Gulf Stream, and then it will be hooking off to the west, and this particular HWRF run brings it into Long Island. But there are several outcomes here. There's one, with obviously the far west, and then this general area here is where we're going to see a possible landfall somewhere within this region. And if it goes further west, it has more time over rather warm water here. And this water is actually quite warm here. And it would not, the point is here that we're not going to see as much time over colder water if it comes further west. So the further west it is, the stronger it will be at landfall upon the New England coastline here. And the farther east it is, the weaker it will be, and the weaker the winds will be. But regardless of any of that, we're going to be dealing with rainfall totals here in excess of probably 4 to 8 inches in this general region, because it is going to be slowing down as it comes in. If we look at the 5-day forecast for the system, you can see we have hurricane watches and tropical storm watches here up for the New England area, especially Long Island here. And you can see that the system slows down. This is 12 hours. This is 12 hours. And since it will be slowing down, the impacts will be exaggerated a little bit in the sense of rainfall. Not exactly in the sense of hurricane winds and storm surge here, as the system will be weakening rather quickly as it makes landfall here. But given that it is delaying its turn just a little bit off to the north here, and it's delaying the movement off to the north, we're probably going to see a track that may, don't be surprised if it shifts a little off to the west here into Long Island. And if you're in Long Island, if you're in areas that are currently just outside of the tropical storm watch zone or outside of the hurricane watch zone off to the west, do be watching this, because this is just as important for you as it is for the people who are currently under watches. And please do be preparing if you live along this stretch of coast here. This is a pretty unusual hurricane, a pretty unusual storm here for this region, and this is not the equivalent of Hurricane Sandy. Sandy was, we have a rather small system here. This is not very large here. Sandy had tropical storm force winds extending from North Carolina all the way into Canada here. So this is definitely a very different storm, and the impacts were quite horrible compared to what will likely happen here with Henri. Henri is still, a very notable storm, and still will be a pretty bad storm in its own right, but it is not the catastrophe that Sandy was. And just because Sandy is one of the significant systems that has hit this region does not mean that this is a Sandy repeat. This is a different storm and will have its own impacts here. So if you're in the region of New England, if you're in this region pretty much from New Jersey all the way into Maine here and inland, because the storm will be moving inland, please do be prepared for the impacts that the system will bring as it comes up here, and stay safe. and listen to your local authorities and listen to your local National Weather Service office for all the latest information pertaining to your area. And get ready. That's all I got for now. Thanks for watching.